What's going on, sports fans? Welcome to a Monday edition of The Drive with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, our NFL guru, our NFL insider host of his own show, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. You hear him every Monday night, 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM. The Game, obviously, with today's show on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. We will tweet it out. Don't forget, we're brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first order if you put in the promo code BYP20. The BYP is for your back your play. And then, of course, the 20%. There are some teams that are not backing their play. There are some teams that are thinking they can drive off into the sunset, and others want to drive over a bridge. As we've got Monday Night Football tonight, Kansas City and Tampa. We'll preview that as we close it out. But Week 9, pretty much in the books right now. The big news of the day, little bit of the coaching carousel. We're already seeing it with the Raiders dismissing some players. I'm sorry, some coaches, coordinators. And then, not a surprise, New Orleans Saints turn around and they fire Dennis Allen, a coach that you and I have basically said over in recent memory, in recent years, should not be a head coach in the NFL. And listen, when you have a poor game, a poor performance, sometimes you can live with it in the NFL, Lloyd. You and I both know that. But when you're basically a team that loses to arguably the worst team in the NFL and you start the season off 2-0, things are pretty bleak. And right now, the Saints lose 23 to 22 to the now 2-win Carolina Panthers. They're both 2-7, but that was just a pitiful performance. And they just decided we're going to go in a different direction.
You're talking about a Saints team that started the season with two wins,
A lot of
91
points.
points scored, right up there with all the great
Oh, yeah.
teams and everybody's like, all right, this is the season for them. They had a good thing going with Kubiak coming there as their offense coordinator, but everything's kind of fallen off the rail for them. Seven straight losses for them. As you said, they lose this week to the Saints, lose the Carolina Panthers 23 to 22. And during this skid, they've only scored 16.6 points per game, one of the worst in the National Football League. And they've just regressed. And it wasn't only just the coach, Q. It was also the quarterback, Derek Carr. I just don't know how much more he has left there. And you have to start looking at the way Mickey Loomis, the general manager, has built this team. So Allen, you know, 18 and 25 record, no playoff appearances since he's been there since 2022, replacing Sean Payton. And it's just a situation where this team is going to need to do some rebuilding, particularly on the defensive side of the ball as well, where they're ranked 28th in the NFL in terms of points allowed. A lot of their good players like Cam Jordan are getting older, and there's just a lot to be done there. So bad situation, and they're going to move on.
And sometimes these coaches and or coordinators are the scapegoat. I don't think that's the case in New Orleans. I don't really know what to say what's going on with Vegas and the Raiders. They fired their OC, Luke Getsy, two others as well. That's an Antonio Pierce call. He's going to be out after this season. Um, but again, listen, if you don't have the roster and you assemble a poor coaching staff, it's one of the reasons I thought they were going to be a bad team this year. I mean, they don't have the talent and they don't have the coaching staff. And this adage, well, they play, he's a player's coach, means absolutely nothing in today's NFL. It really does.
Yeah, and you have Tom Telesco coming over
Yep.
there from from the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Raiders, just as you said, the roster devoid of talent, and they knew this going into the season. You're talking about Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as their potential starting quarterbacks, and they just had a lot of defections. Particularly Jacobs goes to the Packers in terms of running back position. Not a lot there other than Max Crosby. So, yeah, I would agree with you. It was a quick jump with Antonio Pierce going from interim to the head coach job, but it just looked like he may be over in his head. This team's 2-7. They just can't beat anybody. So a lot of changes coming there as well.
NFL trade deadline tomorrow at 4. We'll kind of recap it tomorrow on a Tuesday. But with that being said, you're looking around the league, there's going to be some movement, some players are going down. I thought what stood out to me in my eyes over the weekend was just the ineptness of the play calling in the NFL with some of these head coaches. I mean, um, you look at three games I want to highlight: the Giants and Washington, right? And look, Washington, we joke, but that was my pick to win the NFC East. I'm sticking with them. But it's not like the Giants didn't have an opportunity to win that game yesterday. And a couple things stood out that are alarming to me. when you go back to that game yesterday, and I just want to pull up these numbers. This comes into coaching now. The Giants got the ball, punted, and got a quick 3-and-out, I think, against Washington. They punted. The Giants started on their own 8. Okay. 1st and 10 at their own 8. Tracy, good looking running back, up the gut for 12. 2nd and 6. Tracy off the left guard for 10. 1st and 10 from the 22nd. Daniel Jones scrambled for 24. They still haven't thrown it, mind you. 1st and 10 from the 46. Singletary up the gut for 15. 1st and 10 from Washington, 39. Tracy off the left guard for 10. 1st and 10 at Washington, 29. They inexplicably turn around and drop back Daniel Jones and try to have a screen pass, and it's broken up, strict sack fumble, and that's pretty much Washington gets the ball, they go down the field, and they score. Now, the Giants tied it up, a point being that's one instance where if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. That's number one. Then, that game yesterday, it's a 14-7 game, and then it turns into 21-7. At 14-7, okay, actually 21-7. Well, a couple plays. I want to get to the officiating, then I want to get to Brian Daboll and the coaching, and we'll do the other two games as we go around the league. The Giants, it's a 21-7 game. You have a horrible pick play that shouldn't have been called. I don't know if you saw the play on Slayton. I mean, Kansas City rubs those plays every week and they never get called. But now you settle for the field goal, it's 21-10. Okay. Washington gets a field goal, 24-10. Giants get a touchdown. At 24-10, they get a touchdown. So it's now 24-16. Why in the world are you going for two when it's a two-score game and then you're going to have to chase points? So that's number one. Washington comes back, they kick a field goal, the Giants score. So now they're down 5 because you got to go for two again. But if you didn't and you scored, if you do the math, and if you do the math and they scored that touchdown, it's 21-14, 21-21, 28-27. They beat Washington. So, get into the play calling with Daboll for a minute because, again, they had 140 yards, I think, after the first quarter. And I want to get into chasing these twos.
Yeah, Q. It's crazy. These coaches in this analytics, and I don't even believe it's the analytics department. I think it's just some of these coaches are 2 point crazy. It's almost like they're thinking, oh, it's like the XFL rule where you have to go for two, you're not kicking the extra point. It it makes sense. It's a high percentage play to kick the extra point, get that point, and then go from there. Only go for two when you have to. Don't chase it. And in particularly, the Giants, Daniel Jones didn't have that bad of a game. 20, 26, 174, 2 TDs, no interceptions. And Tracy, as you said, good young running back, 16 rushes, 66 yards. Why not feed him the football? Keep it going. They fought back from 21-7, as you said, at the half, and they get back into the mix. And don't go for the two unless you have to.
I don't get it.
At that point, all the old school coaches that I've talked to
Can,
say
can
that.
I can I bring up another point? Here's what bothered
Yeah,
me the most. You're scratching and clawing, and this is where I've argued with Giant fans now for pretty much a day plus, or almost 24 hours, whatever, over 24 hours. You're scratching and clawing again for yards. That's what their offense is. It's painstaking. It's friggin' painstaking to watch this horrible scrubbiness of a friggin' team. And you finally punch it in. You've got something to build on. What are you doing? Like, kick the extra point. I mean, listen, the wide receiver, the tight end had a horrible game. He had one big play, but he had a couple drops. They didn't bail out the quarterback. The head coach didn't help the quarterback with the play calling and then chasing points. That's the problem I have. Okay. It's just, I get the analytics and I understand all that, but it's all about situational football. And then you got, again, the refereeing, the officiating. Come on, man. What are we doing here with some of these calls?
yeah, and Washington's one of those darling teams of the league this year, and they're going to get the calls. We've seen it over and over in the
Probably
National
right.
Football League. These referees always say, "Oh, well, we don't care who the opponents are and who's playing each other. That's malarkey. The good teams get the call, one way or the other. I'm not saying it's fixed or anything, but the ball always seems to bounce their way, and you see it over and over again with the teams like the Chiefs and even the Eagles nowadays. For years, everyone said, "Oh, the Eagles never get the call." Well, there's so many times where you're like, they're getting the benefit of the doubt there. Now, I was actually surprised yesterday. There were a couple fumbles where they picked up the flag and said, allow the play. But
Yeah,
yeah, this officiating is shoddy, and this is not the only game where I've kind of saw that. Particularly the Seattle Rams game. That was another one I watched where I thought that officiating crew did a bad job. They're ejecting
some
Puka
bad PR.
Nakua
Yep,
probably for nothing.
yep.
There's a lot of pass interference calls. You're like, what was that? And then there was times where they should have blown a flag where they didn't. So
Yeah.
it's consistency, and I've always said these guys need to be full time. They need to go to school. I know you and I are both baseball watchers, and baseball, their guys, they're sending them to school. They're making them watch tape and all that stuff. And these NFL officials are part time.
Yeah, one more note on the Giants game. Look, they're 2-7. I mentioned this to you. I tweeted it out. I tweeted at you. I tagged you on it. You got to bubble wrap Daniel Jones right now. There's no point to continue to throw him out there. Look, say what you want about him. He tries hard and he plays hard. I mean, the play yesterday when he barreled over the DB to score the touchdown. The kid's fighting for his career. I get it. I understand, but it's over with. It's done. Whether they misjudge, misguided, mismanaged, they paid him the money. They made their bet. They got a lie in it. That's it. They're going to stick with them now. And I don't know what the hell's going to happen in Germany against Carolina. But the other thing that really, really is bothering me is Malik Neighbors, who is a nice, talented young rookie who's had a cup of friggin' coffee in the NFL. And he's also dropped some critical passes. We've seen it. Okay, we saw it the first game against Washington, fourth down, right in the breadbasket. Seattle, we saw critical drops with this kid. And I can name a couple other games. Obviously, he got concussed. He missed a little bit of time. But the problem I have with Malik Neighbors is kind of twofold now. He's starting to have that Odell Beckham kind of air about him. And you just can't have it. You just can't. And forgive me, it was the Cleveland game he had to drop, and he had to drop against Washington. He didn't play in the Seattle game, so I apologize for that. I just want to be clear. But point being, he's had a real nice season as a rookie. He's turned into a solid player, talented player, good target. But now he's coming out again, like he did a week or so ago, talking about the quarterback and, hey, we'll check the tape. I'm open. And then with the head coach, well, we just got to bring in the players to paraphrase, that can make plays, right? And I'm like, all right, man, you said what you had to say. You said it now on two occasions. But then yesterday, I'm watching everything unfold. And even when I went back and I watched the game, well, I typically watch it again twice, watched it already this morning, and watched the first half again before we came on. I don't need to see Malik Neighbors yucking it up with Jaden Daniels during the game on a fourth down play. I don't. I think that's this ain't high school, man. This ain't like I think that's absolutely Bush League. I don't want to friggin' hear from a Giant fan at all about the he's passionate, this, that, the other thing. I don't give a shit about that, man. You don't do that. You're in the heat of the moment, the battle, the game. It's a rivalry game. You're at home. You stunk up the friggin' joint. You haven't won a lot of football games. It's the fourth one. I don't give a shit if it's a commercial break. Some veteran needs to pull him to the side and straighten his ass out. And as far as the comments after these games in a press conference, either his PR, Giants PR needs to just tell him to shut up, or he's basically got to stick to the script. Because every time he just wants to go off it, he's throwing his head coach under the bus. He threw his quarterback under the bus. And I don't want to stick up for these two guys, and I've been the most critical of them.
Yeah, he's a rookie, and back in the day, rookies had to earn their keep, and some of them complained. And this is the new world that we live in with the National Football League. A lot of these guys know each other from 7-on-7s, and and going back to high school, and they teamed up in college for these super teams. They got the same agent and all that. There's just not that rivalry around the league that there used to be. And it does bother you when you're like, all right, come on. And I still remember one of the Eagles always helping Emmitt Smith up and patting him on the back. I'm like, oh, that was a good run, man. No, no. That play the game, play it hard, and then yeah, shake hands afterwards, and then you can be friends and all that. But
Yeah.
during the game, you don't want to see that. And it's crazy. They're all going from the Chad Ochocinco book. All these young receivers, it's a me, diva type position. Yeah, yeah, 9 catches, 59 yards, but work on your craft, become one of the best, and then
Agree.
most importantly, as you say, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, agree. I think they're going to be sellers. I don't know if they're going to look. They probably trade Alazari, who's a really nice player. He's played well when healthy. Aziz, I think he's a good player. Slayton's probably on the block. Hylett, they haven't utilized. What's the point of drafting Neal if you're just going to sit him? Like it makes no sense, man. And my only the worry now is because they're not even in purgatory. They're in friggin' flat out hell. With the GM, if you're going to keep the GM and the head coach and you're going to allow these guys to make decision makings, it scares me. And then you watch Saquon pyramid, jump over people, pull the matrix, do all this other stuff. He is carrying the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Jalen Hurts has played well over the last several weeks. I want to give him his just doing flowers. But, this Saquon, it's like amazing what happens, change of scenery and an offensive line. And all that being said, they still almost lost that game because of their head coach who's just chasing points, chasing points, chasing points. I had my friends text me saying we want him fired. They're a 6-2 team. This guy's 20 something games over 500 and they want him fired. And I agree with them. Like, what the hell is Nick Sirianni trying to do here?
He's like Yogi Berra. He's smarter than average bear. He knows everything. He's smarter than everybody too. And it's just crazy that the Eagles 1-3 on these 2 point conversions. What are you doing? You know, like we said, chasing points, this and that. You didn't need to go for it in the first place. Just
No.
kick the extra point. You're not smarter than everybody out there. This game's been played forever. You're acting like a guy who's got not one Super Bowl ring, but multiple Super Bowl rings. And then you just pound your chest over and over. I know more than everybody. And the Eagles 0-2 on fourth downs, 9 for 17 on third downs. They dominated time of possession 38-12 to 21 and some change. In terms of rushing the ball, 46 rushes for 237, 447 total yards, but they
Your
didn't
head
put them
coach is
away.
making it harder for you.
Yes, they let Jacksonville hang around. And the Kobe Dean, nice pick at the end,
Horrible
saved
throw.
their bacon. Yeah, I did not know what Trevor Lawrence was doing out there, but this Eagles team, Q, is living off of they're beating bad teams. I did the records today. The teams they have beaten are combined 18 and 36. Okay, they beat New Orleans 2-7, Cleveland 2-7, the
Giants.
Giants 2-7. Jacksonville was 2-7, and you're barely beating them. And you're going to stand up there, at these press conferences and run up and down the sideline, looking like a crazy man when your team scores and I'm so great and this and that. This Eagles team, the schedule is turned out for them. They're going to face Dallas 3-5.
My
Yeah,
prediction was so off, and Dallas isn't going to have
yeah,
Dak. They're making the playoffs, so my
yeah.
prediction is shot to shit.
So maybe in 2 weeks we'll finally see. They play Washington, who's 7-2. Um, they play the Rams later on, 4-4. They play the Ravens six and
And the
three, and then
Giants.
they're back to Carolina, and
Yep.
it's just like it's cupcake city. So I think this Eagles team, they're going to keep winning, but it's going to be a lot like last year where they're piling these W's up, but you see the flaws with this team.
They
Yes,
are.
Jalen Hurts, it's played very well. He's finally cut down on his turnovers. He had
Yep.
2 TDs yesterday, no interceptions, ran the ball effectively 13 times, 67 yards, 1 TD. But Q, you're right. They're leaning on Saquon a lot. He had almost 199 total yards, which is great. But we know from his experience with the Giants,
We're down.
he can get worn down, got hurt. And there was a point in this game where he came out of the game for about 4 or 5 plays, and a lot of people holding their breath. So, you know, good win for the Eagles, but there's still question marks for the team.
Yeah, look, I think Doug will probably play out the season with Jacksonville. They're playing hard. Trevor Lawrence, that's a different question if they think or not, if they have a franchise quarterback. The other head scratching, and I was just beyond perplexed. You go to that Seattle and that Rams game. Geno Smith's making some really nice friggin'. I mean, he two of the best throws I've ever seen Geno Smith make, and I don't know how, if that's saying much, but they were Hall of Fame throws. The one in the breadbasket down the sideline, and the one for the touchdown to get it to 20-20. But here's again, I don't understand this. You go into overtime, and it's a 4th and 1 from the Rams' 16-yard line. Like, why are they going? Why is Seattle electing to go for it when you know right away if the Rams stop you, a touchdown and/or a field goal wins the game, and then what happens? You get the Stafford play a couple plays later, which is a gorgeous play and a gorgeous catch for the 39-yard touchdown to Robinson, and the Rams. I'm not going to say the phrase I can't stand. You tweeted it out. I won't get on you. They didn't walk it off. They won the game 26-20. But how about again, why are you just not taking the points if you're Seattle? It makes no sense because the Rams last one, two, three, four possessions, including a blocked punt. They punted 4 times. It's not like they were going up and down the field. Take the points and stop them and get out of there with a win.
You know, everybody was getting mad at Belichick, saying he was too conservative when he was winning all those Super Bowls. Well, sometimes you got to be smart and play time of possession, get the points when you can, and then go from there. And you're right. Stafford was struggling at points in this game because Nakua wasn't out there, and he had to lean. He was leaning on Trump way too much. Tyrann Matthews kind of was getting bottled up there. So yeah, why not take the points? See if your defense stopped them. Obviously, Geno Smith, he's a lot like Jameis Winston. He was up and down in this game. He had some great throws, as you said, but he also had 3 interceptions, including that bad pick six in the end zone that was returned 103 yards
Yep.
by Cameron Kitchens for franchise record TD pick six there. And you just wonder about decision making. Don't leave that type of decision in the quarterback's hand. Just hand the ball off, get the points when you can, and yeah, it may be boring, but
Are they
it works.
overthinking it? Are the coach are these coordinators and the head coaches, are they overthinking it? Like, to me, your gut feel is, hey man, our defense has forced 4 punts and we blocked a punt. So we
Right.
made up for the bad pick six. We come back, we have a great drive, 2 ridiculous throws by our veteran quarterback. We're forcing overtime. We're right there in overtime. Kick the field goal. I have confidence that my defense can make a stop.
Yeah, I think they are overthinking it. And like I like to say, they're getting too cute. A lot of them watching Andy Reid and the success he's had, and these coordinators and so forth. They're like, oh, we can do that too. And think about the Dallas game yesterday. That CeeDee Lamb has a hurt shoulder, and they're running him on a jet sweep reverse where he gets hit even further. Like, why are you even running that play?
Sure.
And we're seeing it over and over again. Q on like, you know, the Eagles. I think
Chicago,
yesterday,
Chicago keeping
yeah,
Caleb, Chicago keeping
fourth,
Caleb
yeah,
Williams in.
yeah,
Extra hits
fourth
in
and
it.
inches. Yeah,
Yeah. In a
fourth and
game that's
inches. They're
done.
they're throwing they're throwing the ball down the field on fourth and inches, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. Line it up and just blast it there. But you're right. There's so many situations where like these coaches are overthinking it, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it makes no sense. Monday edition of the Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here, right here on our YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, as well as SR 1029 FM. The Game will catch up with them probably in a week or so. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM. The Game, you can give us a follow respectively on X at Lloyd Vance, at Rich Q on Q. Ravens humbling Denver. I mentioned the Cardinals starting to get it together. They, again, just kind of outclass Chicago. Titans and the Patriots game was a fun game to watch, if you had the under, depending upon which way you hung your hat. But two games that stood out also, AFC North. And we'll get to that Bills win against Miami. Cincinnati waxing the Raiders, but the Browns didn't even show up, and they lose by 17 to the Chargers. Cincinnati, man, you get an angry, motivated Joe Burrow, and I think you and I both talked about it. You brought it up. let them just get a couple wins, right? They were 0-3. Now all of a sudden, three out of their last four. They have a big game against Baltimore, but then they've got the Chargers, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver. They got some winnable games here. I mean, it's not too far off. If they can get a win here, get their record to 5-5, they can win 10 games.
Well, the Bengals are still a dangerous team. They laid an egg against the Eagles. Obviously, they probably want to have that game back. But Burrow was dominant in this one. 251 yards passing, five TDs was season high, only one interception. They didn't even have T. Higgins in this one, and you start thinking Chase Brown is emerging for them. 27 rushes for 20 yards, and you have to like what they're doing defensively. Hendrickson was just dominant in this game, a career high 4 sacks in this
Yep.
one, and a fourth fumble. So their team, you got to watch them. The Steelers, yes, they're 6-2, but they're kind of a flawed 6-2. We've seen the Ravens kind of in their up and down nature, and I still think the Bengals can get back in the mix. Let's not forget, there's seven playoff teams. They could compete for that 6 or 7 spot in the
I remember
playoffs.
too early in they opened up the season. They lost to the Patriots, and they lost to Washington. They had the tough loss against Kansas City. Joe Burrow, 20 touchdowns, four interceptions. I mean, listen, if he goes on a run, I know we're talking Jared Goff, I know we're talking Lamar Jackson, but if this team goes on a run and they win their 10 games and they get a playoff spot, got to put him right in the MVP race. I mean, he's quietly just it sometimes, you got to get humbled. You got to try to figure it out on the fly. Cleveland was not able to do that yesterday. And then you had the Miami game. And man, I'll tell you, that's crazy. So the total for Tua, I think his over passing yards was like 254. And then they had that one play late. And I think it was, I want to say it maybe was to.
Waddle, negative 23 yards on
I
some
think it
kind of
was for Waddle. Yeah, and
lateral. It was some kind of lateral.
and his player prop goes
It,
down. Um, Beckham, nothing yesterday. I mean, he's pretty much done. But point being, that's a hell of a win for the Buffalo Bills, kicking that long field goal late.
Yeah, the Bills, they're a team. They're starting to show their championship pedigree, and Miami's always had some difficulty playing there in Buffalo. And you said about the MVP race, Josh Allen, another solid
There you
game,
go. Yeah.
25 of 39, 235, three TDs, one interception. He'd probably like to have back, but they're getting that running game with Cook. Shakir is his go-to guy. Yes, Coleman had some difficulties yesterday with some drops, and one of them led to Jalen Ramsey with an interception. But the Bills just keep staying the course, and they're going to get some guys healthy, and particularly on defense. And we'll see how they kind of turn around from there. So, good solid win for them, 7-2. Obviously, chasing the Chiefs. We'll see what the Chiefs do this evening.
I thought one of the more impressive performances yesterday, Detroit, man. I mean, they just continue to go about their business. That's a tough spot yesterday for the Green Bay Packers, but I feel Kansas City's undefeated. Baltimore's a real good team. The Eagles are coming on. Minnesota got a much needed win yesterday. Cincinnati's starting to come on. Green Bay's a real good team. You just there's a handful of really good teams. Houston, you can still kind of make again that case, but Washington. But my God, man, phew, I think Detroit's the best team in the NFL. I know they have some holes, but I look at their
Right.
offense and I feel as though you need 35 points to beat them.
They are coming along too, and the thing is, Aaron Glenn's getting that defense together. Yes, they lost Hutchinson to that horrific leg injury, but a lot of guys are picking it up defensively for them. And you're right, offensively, they can give you any game in 2-1. This game, everybody said, "Oh, they can't play outdoors." Well, it was cold, it was rainy, it was not ideal situation for an indoor team because they played most of their games indoor. But golf, 18 to 22, 145, one TD, no interceptions, and what the thing I liked is they could stay with the running game.
Yep.
Montgomery had 73 yards rushing. Jameer Gibbs pitched in as well. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 catches, 56 yards at TD. And Green Bay, you're starting to wonder about them. They're a consistent team. And you're like, okay, is it Love? Is he going to shake it out of this funk? He had an interception, a bad pick six to Kirby Joseph in this one. They had 10 penalties. They had 5 drops. I know the situations were bad out there. Bad snap, down 17-3 at the half, and after that, it just kind of was over. So, yeah, depending on how the Chiefs do, and yeah, I know they're undefeated. Detroit is looking tough. Definitely number one in the NFC.
Yeah, listen, we know Dallas is done. Dak's hurt. CD's hurt. They've got a boatload of issues. Give me give me a team that you think is going to be wholesale fire changes, just sell, sell, sell before the deadline tomorrow at 2. I'm
Uh,
sorry, at 4 p.m. Eastern time.
yeah, it's an interesting one tomorrow. You got to look at the Raiders that we talked about earlier because there's just not a lot there. They're going to need to redo that whole situation, I think, in terms of their head coach and why not listen to offers from Max Crosby? I know he's their cornerstone guy, but maybe have him go. Yeah, you got the Cotley Myers there. They're 2-7 team, as you said. Cleveland, Andrew Barry, their general manager. There's not a lot there. I don't think Miles Garrett goes, but maybe some other players for them. Jacksonville, we talked about Dougie P and his situation. Their season's going awry too, well as well. So maybe they get rid of some of their younger players. They already did trade Cameron Robinson, sending him over to the Vikings. So I think they're teams that you could possibly see. And don't forget about New England as well. They've already jettisoned some players, and they seem in kind of full rebuild mode.
Monday Night Football tonight, Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Even if you look at the line, I can see Tampa Bay being down by like 14-17 in this one. I mean, right now the line's up. It'll close right at 9. I think it's a tough spot for Tampa Bay. Again, if Kansas City's up by 17 or so, Tampa Bay maybe claws back. Baker has one of those 350-yard monster games, but maybe he has 4 touchdowns, but he's got 4 picks. I don't know. Um, I like Kansas City in this spot. Tampa Bay's plus 300 and the total is 45.5. By the way, the overs has been hitting left and right in the NFL of late, but that's kind of where I'm leaning tonight. Kansas City laying the 9.
It's going to be an interesting one, Q, because they're giving 8.5. So that's a lot of points. But the last time these two teams played, City beat them 41-31. That was in October of 2022. So it could be a high scoring affair. The only thing is uh, the receiving core for the Bucs is very beat up. Obviously, no Godwin, no Mike Evans.
That's
But
true.
I think this is a good spot for Kansas City. Now, that over is going to be tough to read, 45.5. But so I'll say go with Kansas City, but they may be a little bit under there because after a while, Andy Reid may take his foot off the gas and kind of just go from there with the win.
I know we typically do game ball and lackey. Did you tweet him out?
Did not tweet him out, but I got him right here for you.
So game ball, is it NFC?
It is not NFC.
Game ball. It's not Burrow. Lamar Jackson. You already gave him a game ball. Is it obscure? Is it a kicker? I don't know. Who'd you give it to?
I gave it to Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson. I mean, career high 4 sacks, a forced fumble. It's 41-24 route. I know it's the Raiders, but he now leads the NFL in sacks with 11. Just dominant performance. And as we said earlier, that the Bengals are the comeback kids. Yes, they lose a lot of games early, but they're going to fight to the end. So I think that was a good win for them. Obviously, could have gave it to a lot of other guys as well, particularly even Saquon. Even your boy Aaron Rodgers, he had a good week this week.
Yeah, on a Thursday night, by the way. Um, Lackey, man, there's some bad quarterback play. Is it possible you gave it to a head coach?
There's a couple times where I was like, all right, maybe I should give one to the head coach. Obviously, Dallas, Mike McCarthy, he's in consideration for the lackey, and there's some changes coming to Dallas. But I did give it to Geno Smith. I know he had some good throws in that game,
Wow,
but
I'm a little surprised because of the pick six.
a lot of pick six, and he just, he had 3 INTs in this game.
I know.
Yeah, there
Could
were a
have had
couple
4.
times. Yeah, yeah, there were a couple, and I almost gave it to Jameis Winston as well. He was terrible for Cleveland. Obviously, he's not the answer. And then you talk about on Sunday Night Football, I gave up in that game because Joe Flacco, he's not. I know Richardson has not played well, but he's not the answer either.
No.
So, but I did go with Geno Smith, and as we were talking about, a lot of coaches and quarterbacks are playing pretty bad at this
Oh,
time of
let
the
me
year.
let me ask you this before we got about 30 seconds. Do you think Bryce Young gets traded?
No, I think David Tepper is going to keep him around. First overall pick. Dallas likes him as well. He played well yesterday. That was a, I know they're two bad teams, but that was a big win over a Saints team, and now we'll see how he does in Germany. Why not just go with the kids, see what they got, and then go from there. If they do trade him, I think it'll be around draft time next year or in training camp. But I think he survives tomorrow.
All right, there you have it. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us on the drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, give him a follow at Lloyd Vance. We're powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clemens Bridge Road. Fresh roasted coffee. Check the show notes on our YouTube link and channel, BYP20. That'll get you 20% off your first purchase. You can catch Lloyd every Monday, 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM. The game. He was kind enough to join us tonight. He'll be back live on the air next week. Enjoy Monday Night Football. Appreciate it. And we'll start talking about these lines midweek with BYP. Appreciate you, pal.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.